Hey, hi, hello. Welcome to Diana Emerson today. We are going to be listening to Twisted Crimes. Okay, she was lured and shot 5 times by her boyfriend's dad.
This is the story of Taisha Starks, age 22, who was shot at point-blank range by her boyfriend's father, Tyler Curry, during a bitter baby custody exchange.
Mm,
Hello, my name is Taisha Sparks, and I have a crybaby for a son. I'm ready to tell my story.
This happened while she was picking up her one-year-old child who her boyfriend, Bryce Allen Curry, had called her to come pick up while she was in school. The sad part of the whole incident is that after she was brutally shot 5 times by her boyfriend's father, no one has been charged in the killing. Hello and welcome to Twisted Crimes. Subscribe and hit the
wow.
like button for more stories. This
Okay.
story will be taking us to Jackson, Tennessee. Jackson,
Yeah.
Tennessee is a vibrant city located in the heart of
Eddie,
West Tennessee. Jackson,
thank you.
Tennessee has a high rate of violent and property crime compared to the national average. The violent crime rate in Jackson is 54, over twice the U.S. average
Hey,
of 22.7.
morning,
Property
mister.
crime in Jackson is even higher at
No
63.8,
barking.
significantly above the U.S.
No
average.
barking.
Taisha Katari
Eddie.
Arya Starks, age 22, was born in Jackson, Tennessee. Her mother Tarsha Harris and her father Philip Starks were happy to have her as their daughter. She has a brother who was very close to her growing up. Taisha grew up to be a young lady who loved singing, cheering, dancing, and being amongst friends and family. She was an honors graduate of Haywood High in 2018. During her years of attending high school, she was a basketball cheerleader for the Haywood Tomcats and a member of other extracurricular activities which contributed to the bonds and relationships she developed with her peers. She later attended Austin Peay State University where she was majoring in biology to pursue her dreams of being a dentist. Taisha had a one-year-old baby who she really loved a lot named Tansidin Curry. Taisha met the father of her child sometimes while she was in school. His name is Bryce Allen Curry.
Bryce Allen Curry.
Things between the two parties started going down the drain after they had their son. There was constant issues between them. They finally made a plan as to how the custody will be handled. Bryce was supposed to keep Tansidin from Mondays to Wednesdays. She is supposed to take care and keep the baby on the other days. As mentioned earlier, she was a college student at Austin Peay State University in Clarksville, Tennessee. So on February 20th, 2023, Taisha went ahead to drop her baby at Bryce's house in Jackson, Tennessee, where Bryce stayed with his parent. That happened to be a Monday, which was one of the days Bryce was supposed to be with the baby. So after dropping her son, she drove from Jackson to Clarksville, her school, which is about 2 hours apart. Upon getting to school, Taisha received a phone call from Bryce saying she needs to find someone else to look after the baby as he has class to attend the next day. Taisha was a bit hesitant since that was one of the days he should take care of the baby, and also she missed all her classes the previous semester because of the pregnancy, but as a mother, she could not afford her child hanging in the unknown, so she decided to drive another 2 hours to go get her baby. There was a bit of back and forth between them. Bryce wanted Taisha to send her mother Tarsha Harris to come get the baby, but Tarsha could not go because she was at work. Taisha finally agreed to come get the baby. She got in her car with one of her friends and they headed to Jackson. When they got to the city, they picked up another friend who lived nearby Bryce's house. Taisha wanted her friend Nadia, who they picked up in Jackson, to record while picking up the baby. Upon getting to Bryce's house, Nadia also gave Taisha a stun gun just in case Bryce tries to act crazy. With the stun gun in her pocket, Taisha proceeded to the steps of the house and knocked the door. After a few knocks, Bryce's father, Tyler Curry, age 44, came to the door and there was an argument which Tyler claimed Taisha was unnecessarily aggressive towards him and she told him to shut up at a point in time. So what actually happened during that brief moment isn't confirmed. Tyler has his account while Taisha's friend who were watching and also recording have their account too. Tyler retreated into his house and then came back blasting his gun towards Taisha. He hit her 5 times and she was able to stagger towards her car. She got into the car and tried to drive it, but ran into a mailbox few feet away, after which she passed away. Police was called and investigation was done, but at the end of the whole investigation, no one was arrested. Her friends and families were not happy with that.
Tennessee family desperate for justice, taking their demands to the district attorney's office. They want the person who they say killed a young mother arrested.
They say that person is someone the family knows all too well. WRG's April Thompson has more on the twist in this case and why officials say they have more investigating to do. About a dozen protesters with signs rallied at the state office building in Jackson, Tennessee Thursday. Tasha Harris pushed for this demonstration, hoping it will bring answers and an arrest in the shooting death of 22-year-old Taisha Starks, her daughter.
I'm upset because my daughter was murdered. Senseless killing.
It was February 20th when Taisha showed up at this Jackson home to pick up her 1-year-old son from his father. Harris says the father's parents lived here at the time, and things had already been tense between all of them.
He knew the days that he was supposed to keep my grandson. My daughter had just dropped him off that Monday morning. He called her in an irate state, stating that he was not going to be able to keep my grandson, and he knew that she was in class. So she went back to get her baby.
When Taisha came to this house, she reportedly went to that front door and knocked.
Nadia Blockett was in the car waiting on Taisha when she says there was an argument.
She told him shut the f up. And then she was in the yard and he was at his door. He never stepped on the porch. And so when she said that, he got mad and the door had shut.
The witness admits she handed Taisha a stun gun to take with her when she first got out of the car.
For protection, because they were talking prior to that, earlier that morning, they was already calling her and threatening her.
She says the young mother never pulled the stun gun. Taisha died a few doors down as she was trying to drive away.
For them to have a gun, I feel like it was all planned. They did not have to do this to my daughter. She had her whole future ahead of her.
But the person who fired the shots and who still hasn't been officially identified by officers has not been charged.
We just want some answers. It's been 2 months. And we still haven't heard anything. They have called us and let us know, how the investigation is going.
The Madison County Sheriff's Office sent us a press release saying the disturbance escalated and witnesses corroborated that Ms. Starks arrived with a stun gun and was actively arching the device when she was shot. They told us all information has been turned over to the district attorney's office. We contacted the Madison County District Attorney, Joey Pickens, who said no decision has been made on charges. And it's why these protesters showed up at the DA's office Thursday, but never got any further than the lobby. Even protesters from Memphis are joining in their cry for justice.
This man had time enough to go and cool off. And he murdered a young black mother in cold blood.
They also marched to the county mayor's office and were stopped at the entrance, but they did get the ear of Jackson City Mayor.
I have no authority over DA's office or the sheriff's department. I can ask questions, and so that's what I'm going to do.
And they say they finally got to talk with the Madison County Sheriff's Office, who promised to meet with the family next week.
For this district attorney, even the mayor, we want answers. And when we need to be held accountable, we're going to do that.
The Madison County Sheriff's Office was contacted about the case. They sent a press release saying, the disturbance escalated and witnesses corroborated that Taisha arrived with a stun gun and was actively arching the device when she was shot, but her friends denied any of that happened. They believe it was a setup.
I don't what nobody say. Taisha was set up. They wanted to kill that girl. And if it was up to me, the daddy would be in jail, the mama would be in jail, and Taisha baby daddy would be in jail. I don't care because the granddad shot her. All they ass to be in jail. Because you mean to tell me it was your day for to keep your child. You steady blowing this girl phone up while she at school trying to get her education, trying to make a living for her and her kids, trying to make the best life possible. It's giving you hell. So we ain't gonna talk about that. Y'all did all that, knowing that it was court order for this man to keep this baby. So when she being a mama, because that's what anybody, a mother would do. Me as a mother, I believe if somebody keep calling me, come get your child, I want to keep my child, court order or not, I'm believing I'm going to go get my baby. You see what I'm saying? So when she get there, y'all get into an altercation, which y'all already knew it was going to be an altercation because the relationship with the family was toxic. Like, y'all knew that. He decided to go in the house and get a gun. and shoot this young lady compared to him, little girl, and as a man, yeah, she was set up, and that be premeditated. And I don't understand how ain't nobody in jail because the whole house would be up if I was on the force. Y'all talk so much bitter baby mamas, but let's talk about these crazy ass, mental patient ass, bitter baby daddies. Justice for Taisha.
The sheriff's office also said that all the information had been turned over to the district attorney's office, and any comment and final decision as to whether there will be charges or not would have to come from them. Madison County District Attorney Jody Pickens was contacted and he said no decision has been made on charges, prompting Taisha's family to protest.
And for the first time, we are hearing audio from that day. Here's News 2's Maya Owens. We do want to warn you, some of this audio is disturbing.
Mama, we gotta talk about this, and I need to talk to you about this.
A mother's love is easy to talk about.
Maybe 5 or 6, more than that, because she's gonna call me while she's in class.
But the hard part comes when she faces her new reality.
I just feel like that my daughter was robbed of her life. She was robbed of all the accomplishments.
For the first time, we're hearing audio taken on that day she was shot and killed. This recording taken by a friend who rode with Taisha to pick up her son when an argument ensued in front of the home.
When he came back out of the house, he started shooting. Protest was just to get awareness and to get my daughter's story out and to just, get justice for my daughter.
Bryce and his parent relocated shortly after the incident, taking Tansitan along with them to Texas, where Taisha's family wasn't allowed to see their grandson. She was really vocal about what was happening, especially knowing the same man who killed Taisha is the same person taking care of her son. Some months later, the two families were able to work something out and Tarsha Harris was able to see her grandson for a bit. Here is what she said about the visit. Happy is an understatement right now. First and foremost, I have to thank God for what he has allowed to transpire on this morning. After a rough 4 months of crying, praying, fasting, and crying again, God saw fit to touch their hearts and allow me to see and spend some time with my grandbaby. I am overjoyed at the moment and can't really put into words how excited I am to see him. This is just another sign from God that he has everything in control, and it has already worked out in my favor. I will continue to hold on and be steadfast. Thank you all again. As at the time of making this video, the Madison County District Attorney's Office again said there are no new updates and the case is still under investigation. We do hope the real truth comes to light very soon. Our deepest and sincere condolences to the families and friends of Taisha Starks. May Taisha's memory be a blessing for her family and for all who knew her, and may her life and death be an inspiration and a turning point towards justice and increased protection for gun violence survivors. Please stay safe out there and see you guys in the next video.
On January 6, 1999, the crew of a tugboat encountered difficulties while trying to dock their vessel. When workmen went down to examine what had jammed the propeller, they made a shocking discovery. It was human skin that had been fashioned into a suit. A week later, authorities revealed that the remains belonged to missing 23-year-old Katarzyna Zawada. Investigators began a search for the person responsible for the killing that lasted nearly 2 decades. But the question was, who had lured the young woman to her death? And what drove her killer to mutilate the body to such an extent? Hello, and welcome back to N7 Crime Story Time, where we cover solved, unsolved, and twisted cases from around the world. Beautiful city of Krakow in Poland. With a population of 800,000, it's the second largest city in Poland and one of the oldest. Krakow's
Okay,
history
you're
is
back.
steeped in mythology, with the belief that the settlement was founded over the cave of the Wewel Dragon, famous for its medieval town, once the center of trade, which has become a heritage site protected by the United Nations Environmental, Scientific and Cultural Organization, UNESCO. In terms of affordable living, Krakow has been considered an ideal location for those working with a budget, and is one of the safest cities in Europe. But tourists are warned to be wary of pickpockets. It's here that Katarzyna Zawada was born and would meet her tragic demise. Born on June 1st, 1975 in Krakow, Poland, Katarzyna Zawada was the only child of Martha and Antoni Zawada. Growing up, Katarzyna was a happy child who enjoyed outdoor activities and listening to music by artists from the 1960s. One of her favorite bands was the Grateful Dead. Katarzyna was particularly close to her father, and the two often went out together for hikes along nature routes. However, it was during one of these adventures that disaster struck. While on a hike in 1995, Antoni slipped and ended up injuring his spine severely. A year later, he passed away after suffering with various spine-related illnesses. Katarzyna went into a depression following his death, believing herself responsible for it all. Her mother, Martha, became involved in helping Katarzyna overcome her depression. She began visiting a psychiatrist at the Nowa Huta Hospital in Krakow. Katarzyna also started attending Jagiellonian University. She enrolled to study psychology, but within the first semester changed her major to history before settling on religious studies. The few friends she did have described Katarzyna as a nice person who often seemed sad. Katarzyna was a responsible young woman who was determined to get help to overcome her struggle with depression. That was why, when she failed to attend an appointment on November 12, 1998, her mother Martha knew something was wrong. Concerned for Katarzyna's safety, Martha started to think about anything strange in her daughter's behavior that morning. The last time she'd seen her was before she left home for university. It was then she started to have scary thoughts about what could have happened to Katarzyna. Martha feared that Katarzyna had perhaps decided to forget getting treatment from a professional and opted to join one of the many cults that had sprung up in Poland to find her path in life. Fearing this scenario, Martha visited a reputed Dominican church in Krakow. The church was known for intervening with cult recruits and extracting them from these groups. The church leaders advised Martha to report Katarzyna missing. That afternoon, Martha visited the Krakow police station to file a missing person report. She told officers that she last saw Katarzyna that morning, but her daughter failed to make a scheduled appointment with a psychiatrist. She described Katarzyna as being responsible and determined to overcome life's hurdles. She told police that Katarzyna was last seen wearing a hooded corduroy coat, black jeans, and red shoes. However, the police seemed less than helpful. Given that Katarzyna had suffered with depression and was at an impressionable age, they believed she'd run away by her own choice. Frustrated, Martha contacted private investigators to help her search for Katarzyna. She also took to canvassing for her daughter on her own by visiting the university and asking questions about her whereabouts at popular hangout spots frequented by students. In the month that followed, Martha received 2 phone calls from an anonymous male caller who told Martha that he had information related to Katarzyna's disappearance. Hesitant, Martha told the private investigator about the phone calls and that the person wanted to meet with her in the Krakow Market Square. She was advised that it may have been a prank caller, and in the end didn't follow up on the lead. There was also a report that Katarzyna was spotted riding a bus in Waldbrom, but it was never verified. At the same time, the police had also failed to follow up on any leads regarding Katarzyna's disappearance. But the case was about to take a sinister and disturbing twist in the new year. In the early morning hours of January 6, 1999, crewmen on the pusher tugboat The Elk were returning from a long day of work on the Vistula River in Krakow. As they approached the harbor and prepared to dock, the propeller seized. The river was known to be polluted by everyday debris, so they were not overly concerned. The crew were able to float the boat the last few meters and dock. The men, along with their captain, were tired, hungry, and cold. They opted to get a good night's sleep and clear up the engine when they returned after sunrise. When the crewmen opened the engine hatch, they found a pale and spotted type of material tangled up in the propeller blade. The smell coming from the material was terrible. As they pulled on the object, the men believed that a large piece of leather had somehow floated into the engine from the river. Once the object was freed from the propeller blade, the men took a closer look. Their simple task of cleaning the engine had taken on an unexpected and horrific turn. The men noticed what looked like a human ear attached to folds of skin. The captain called the police immediately as the rest of the crew set about to look for a body. They believed that the body may have been damaged by the propeller and the skin may have been cut away from the victim, but there was nothing else in the engine compartment. The police arrived at the dock and set about examining the skin that had been pulled from the propeller. From what they could see, the unknown victim had been meticulously skinned like an animal. The remains were taken to the office of the medical examiner as divers and investigators began a thorough search of the Vistula River. On January 14, 1999, a week after the discovery of the skin, they found a right leg, a piece of flesh from a buttock, and several scraps of denim and flannel. DNA testing also provided investigators with the identity of the unknown victim, Katarzyna Zawada. Retracing Katarzyna's final moments before her death was going to prove difficult. Police had not taken the initial missing persons report seriously, therefore losing crucial investigation time in the last 2 months. An autopsy was performed on Katarzyna's remains, and at first, investigators believed that she died after falling into the Vistula River. On the surface, it looked as though Katarzyna's body had been damaged by the propeller, leading to the severe mutilation. The autopsy results were about to reveal a shocking and violent picture. The medical examiner determined that the skin was peeled off Katarzyna's body and made into a skin suit that was possibly used by the killer. Her limbs and head had been removed. There were also several wounds and lacerations on the skin that suggested Katarzyna had been stabbed before she was eventually killed. Another shocking discovery made by the medical examiner was puncture wounds under the victim's arms and on the inside of the thighs. These wounds suggested that the killer targeted the major arteries and left Katarzyna to bleed to death. It was determined that the makeshift skin suit had been left in the river for 2 to 3 weeks before it was discovered. The discovery altered the course of the investigation. Police were now looking for a sadistic killer. The shocking nature of the crime gripped Poland, and investigators were starting to develop some of their own theories. Based on the report of the medical examiner, investigators started to draw parallels to the 1991 movie Silence of the Lambs. In the movie, the killer, Buffalo Bill, was known to murder women and flay them before fashioning their skin into bodysuits. Another coincidence was one of the victims in the movie was named Kate, which is the English equivalent to the Polish name Katarzyna. This theory pushed investigators to suspect that it was possible Katarzyna's killer was preying on her prior to her disappearance and murder. They needed to look into her final moments before her death. Investigators spoke to Martha and asked her if she had noticed anything different about Katarzyna. She told officers that her daughter had recently started to lose weight and changed her hair color from black to blonde. Other than that, Martha wasn't aware of any deviation from her normal routine. It was then that investigators spoke to friends and professors from the university. It was news to Martha when investigators discovered that Katarzyna had stopped attending classes 3 weeks before she was reported missing. Martha told investigators that Katarzyna would wake up every day at the same time and return home every evening as she normally had when she was attending classes. This revelation strengthened the theory of the investigation team that it was probable Katarzyna had developed a relationship with her killer weeks earlier. They believed that her killer may have connected with Katarzyna through a shared interest and slowly started to prime her for his own reasons. This was evident with her sudden interest in dieting and weight loss. It may have also been at the killer's suggestion that she change her appearance. But her friends and mother made no mention of Katarzyna having met anyone prior to her murder. Despite the interviews with people who knew Katarzyna, investigators were left with little to no clues. Then, after months of looking for answers, they received their first lead. On May 31, 1999, the Krakow Police Department received a call from an elderly man who reported that there had been a murder in his house. Upon arrival, police met the elderly man who walked them to the basement where they found the victim decapitated. The head was discovered next to the body and had been flayed. As they made their way back to the kitchen, they came across a bizarre sight. The man's grandson, Vladimir W., was singing in Russian and dancing. Polish authorities do not release the full name of the suspect to avoid any problems they may face after being released from prison. Police questioned the man, who admitted to killing his 50-year-old father. Vladimir then admitted that he put on his father's skin mask and clothes, then pretended to be his deceased father while speaking to his grandfather. Vladimir was taken in for interrogation, and investigators quickly discovered that both he and Katarzyna attended the same university. He had finished a year before her. After further questioning, investigators realized that the two didn't know each other. There was also no evidence to suggest that Katarzyna had been in the suspect's house. Vladimir told investigators that he killed his father because of a personal vendetta he developed due to abandonment. His motive could not be linked to Katarzyna's murder, as her death appeared more random than personal. Vladimir would eventually be convicted of his father's murder and was sent to a Russian prison after serving 5 years in the Polish prison system. In the year 2000, investigators were set on the path of another man. His identity wasn't revealed to the public because he was only a person of interest. The man in question was considered a loner who had a history of stalking women along the Vistula River. A background check revealed that he'd been charged for assault by a woman years earlier, but nothing had come of it. Although he looked promising as a suspect, investigators eventually let him go due to a lack of evidence. The case started to grow cold as leads were few and far between. Investigators could not link other possible suspects to Katarzyna's murder, and by the mid-2000s, the case officially grew cold. Advancements in forensic technology gave investigators who'd been working on Katarzyna's case a new promising chance at solving the mystery of her killer's identity. In 2012, the prosecutor's office decided to reopen Katarzyna's case and assembled a team of police officers from the Cold Case Unit dubbed the X-Files. After gaining permission from Katarzyna's family, her remains were exhumed and retested for foreign DNA. Together, experts from the 3D Expertise Laboratory of the Wrocław Medical University collaborated with investigators and forensic specialists. They reconstructed a three-dimensional model of Katarzyna and added to it the possible injuries, based on autopsy reports, that may have been inflicted on her prior to death. From their observation, forensic specialists determined that Katarzyna was beaten with a weapon used by someone who trained in martial arts. Forensic teams also discovered vegetation on Katarzyna's skin that was not consistent with that found in or near the Vistula River. This proved to them that Katarzyna was murdered in a different location and then transported to and disposed of in the river. The forensic team added that it was possible Katarzyna was drugged and endured prolonged torture before she was eventually killed. Armed with this new evidence, investigators looked further afield for help in developing a profile of the killer. In 2014, Polish authorities looked for help from international investigation agencies. Most notably, the Federal Bureau of Investigation, FBI, stepped in and began developing a profile of the killer. According to the final profile developed for the case, the FBI believed that the suspect was a male in his 20s or 30s. The suspect's psychological profile suggested that he would have had narcissistic tendencies and exhibit sadistic and generally abnormal behavior in social situations. The profile also suggested that the suspect had above-average intelligence and was motivated to murder due to the pleasure he felt at taking another human life. He may have been unable to reach the level of pleasure he desired through normal intimacy and turned to inflicting pain on others as a way to satisfy his needs. They believed that the killer would have been skilled with his hands, prompting them to believe he could be a butcher, surgeon, veterinarian, or tailor. He may also have had a strong desire to be a female. The savage manner of the killing also suggested that the suspect had a deep anger towards women, and not just Katarzyna. The profile indicated that this anger stemmed from his inability to be a female. It also noted that he was likely someone who stalked his victims and developed a friendly relationship of sorts before luring them to their death. In their findings, the FBI concluded that the suspect was likely to repeat this offense. With a fresh perspective, they started to look at several possible suspects, but for 5 years, the case remained stagnant. It was an unexpected call that made them revisit an old suspect. The Polish media began reporting about the new developments in Katarzyna's case. In 2017, a woman who remained anonymous called the police with some interesting information. The woman alleged to know a man who was a mechanic and sometimes worked at the local mortuary. She told officers that he showed an unusual interest in Katarzyna's murder and in the subsequent investigation. She also remarked that he lived in close proximity to the river where the young woman's remains were discovered. He was identified as 52-year-old Robert Janczewski and lived in Krakow's Kazimierz district. Oddly enough, Robert was suspect number 2 in the original investigation, but at the time, investigators couldn't find enough evidence to link him to the murder. Armed with the new evidence, investigators started to look into Robert's background. They discovered that he actually ticked several of the boxes in the FBI profile. There has not been much information released about Robert, but based on police records, some information has become available to the public. Robert served in the Polish military and worked in the mortuary by assisting with dissections. After returning to Krakow, he gained employment at the Krakow Zoological Institute, where he was responsible for skinning animals. However, he was fired after he killed several rabbits that had been used in experiments. When questioned, he couldn't provide a reason for his behavior. He then drifted about, doing odd jobs to make a living. He never did amount to much in his life career-wise, but was considered unusually intelligent. Robert was known around the city and often walked aimlessly, getting to know the streets of Krakow better. Investigators questioned people who knew of Robert and learned a great deal more that provided some circumstantial evidence to their investigation. It's understood that Robert often enjoyed cross-dressing. They were told that he had a tendency to stalk women as they walked along the Vistula River. However, investigators' interest grew when they discovered that Robert attended a local gym and had trained in the martial arts. He was also known to frequent cinemas in his free time. Further questioning with people that knew Robert revealed that after he was interviewed by police in the year 2000, he took an interest in religion and began attending Mass daily. Looking through their notes, investigators found another odd detail. Martha, Katarzyna's mother, mentioned that every time she visited her daughter's grave, she found a burnt-out candle. Investigators were struck by this oddity and questioned cemetery workers who said that Robert visited the grave of Katarzyna daily. They also noticed him bearing a letter near her grave. These discoveries led investigators to placing surveillance cameras in strategic areas to monitor Robert's movements. They found that Robert visited Katarzyna's grave every night. Investigators also dug up certain parts of the graveyard to look for the letters he allegedly buried, but nothing was found. After months of watching his everyday routine, investigators decided to make their move. Robert was arrested on October 4, 2017 on suspicion of murder with regard to Katarzyna Zawada. While he was being questioned by police, another team conducted a search of his home. Robert denied knowing Katarzyna or having anything to do with her disappearance or murder, but the team searching his home uncovered evidence that proved otherwise. In Robert's possession was a diary. The notes he made detailed several incidents of stalking that he carried out on numerous women. Most damning of all was that it detailed his meeting and eventual murder of Katarzyna. Robert made notes about how he became friends with Katarzyna and had started to gain her trust. He described the method and included information on how he met her and feigned an interest in the books and music she often spoke about. He also detailed how subtle manipulation led to Katarzyna starting to alter her appearance to better suit what he believed was the ideal woman. However, the most disturbing aspect was the details he recorded of her murder. Police never released the actual information, but provided details on how he set up the fateful meeting between them on November 12, 1998. According to police in the diary, on the day she disappeared, Katarzyna agreed to meet with Robert and visit a cottage he'd suggested to her some time ago. The two of them met in Krakow city center and took a bus out to the countryside. Robert knew the area well and was aware that during the weekdays it was quiet. The area was used as a farming area by the locals who owned these cottages and normally rented them out on weekends. Katarzyna was unaware the entire time that she was walking into a well-devised trap set up by the one person she trusted, Robert. Investigators were able to locate the cottage and, in the bathroom, found biological evidence that matched with the DNA of Katarzyna Zawada. They were able to build a picture of what may have happened to Katarzyna. Investigators believe that Robert held the young woman hostage in the cottage until mid-December 1998, an entire month after she was reported missing. It was here he carried out his torture of his victim. Investigators stated that they believed that Katarzyna was restrained with an ankle strap on her right leg. They also concluded that the injuries visible on her skin could have been caused by heavier blunt instruments, such as barbells. They described it as a slow torture until she eventually died. Thereafter, Robert dismembered and flayed Katarzyna before getting rid of the remains he didn't need in the Vistula River. He then used Katarzyna's skin to make himself a bodysuit. When the bodysuit didn't fit him, he decided to discard the remains in the Vistula River, expecting all the evidence to float away and never be found. Robert was charged with the murder of Katarzyna in 2017. The case details were not revealed publicly, but Robert remained detained in prison since his arrest. In December 2018, he made allegations of abuse against prison officials, but a judge found that the claims were false. With the COVID-19 pandemic, Robert's case was one of many delayed by the global lockdown. However, justice was finally served in 2022 when Robert was convicted of murder and sentenced to life imprisonment. The case of Katarzyna did raise doubts among the general public. As much as they wanted to see someone pay for the violent murder of the young woman with such potential, many questioned the evidence and the manner in which the investigation remained a closely guarded secret. In the end, the justice system saw fit to charge Robert based on the case brought against him by the prosecution. For Katarzyna's mother, no amount of justice will be able to bring back her only child, and the horror of her death will continue to haunt her for the rest of her life. Today's case not only highlighted the depravity and dangers that lurk in every corner of society, but the victims as being some of the most vulnerable people around us. Robert easily manipulated Katarzyna and preyed on her weaknesses to fulfill his sadistic desires. Perhaps Robert could have been caught earlier on in the case if the police took his mother's concerns seriously. Do you believe that it was the lack of police interest that led to Katarzyna's death? What more could have been done to prevent such a tragedy?
At the top tonight, a Brownsville family is asking for help. Their daughter found dead in Matamoros.
All of her teeth were taken out, and she was so bruised. Police believe that she was tortured.
The morning of August 9th, 2020 was a normal day for Lisbeth Flores, her two children, and the residents of Brownsville, Texas. However, all that changed when Lisbeth received a call from Mexico informing her that the father of her two kids had been kidnapped and a ransom was demanded for his return. In a panic, Lisbeth put together the little money that she had and left for the trip to Mexico, but she was never seen again. What happened to Lisbeth? Did she simply have an accident, or is there a more disturbing reason for her disappearance? Brownsville is a Texas town with a population of 186,000, bordering Mexico and the Gulf of Mexico. It's a part of the Matamoros-Brownsville metro area and has an Hispanic culture and a subtropical climate. It was founded in 1848 by Charles Stillman, a riverboat businessman. It's also a wildlife refuge with several state parks and historical sites. Brownsville has a high percentage of Hispanic Americans, 93.9%, the third highest in the U.S. outside of Puerto Rico. The crime rate in Brownsville is 206 per 100,000 people, which is lower than the U.S. average, but higher than most U.S. cities. The crime rate decreased by 11% from 2019 to 2020. This is the city where Lisbeth Flores lived. Lisbeth Flores was born on May 30th, 1997 in Brownsville, Texas. She was the daughter of Jose Luis Flores and Rubio Maria de Los Angeles Hernandez. She is also a lovely sister to her two brothers, Cesar Saldana and Edric Saldana, and her four sisters, Carmen Flores, Jaslyn Saldana, Jasmine Saldana, and Irina Saldana. Lisbeth grew up in a loving and supportive family that valued education, faith, and community. She attended Los Fresnos High School, where she excelled academically and socially. She participated in various extracurricular activities and had a passion for learning and exploring new things. She enjoyed reading, writing, and traveling. In 2016, at age 19, Lisbeth fell in love with a man living in Matamoros, Mexico. The couple's love grew even though the boyfriend was not always around. Soon, Lisbeth became pregnant. Together, the couple had 2 children, a daughter 4 years old named Maria Ivana Morales, who Lisbeth gave birth to when she was 19 years old, and a son, 8-month-old Nelson Ivan Morales, who Lisbeth gave birth to when she was 23 years old. Lisbeth was a devoted mother to her 2 children. Not much is known about the father's involvement with the children, but she raised them with the help of her parents and siblings, who adored them as if they were their own. Lisbeth loved her children more than anything in the world and dedicated her life to providing them with a happy and healthy upbringing. She taught them to be respectful, compassionate, and curious. She also encouraged them to pursue their dreams and hobbies, such as dancing, soccer, and painting. Lisbeth was a sociable, friendly, and humorous person with numerous friends and admirers. She was known for her warm personality, willingness to help others, and her talent for making people laugh with her witty jokes and stories. Lisbeth had many dreams and aspirations for herself and her children. She wanted to see her children grow up into successful and happy adults who'd follow their passions and make their own mark on the world. On August 9, 2020, Lisbeth Flores received a distressing call at her home in Brownsville, Texas. The caller claimed that Lisbeth's boyfriend and father of her 2 children had been kidnapped by a criminal group in Matamoros, Mexico. He urged her to come and pay the ransom. Lisbeth didn't hesitate. She grabbed her belongings and rushed to the border. She crossed the Veterans International Bridge into Mexico, hoping to help in any way she could. When she crossed into Matamoros on foot, she was carrying an undisclosed amount of cash. Once in Matamoros, Mexico, Lisbeth called her mother, Maria Rubio, and told her about the situation. She assured her that she'd be back home later that night. Although Rubio was worried, she trusted her daughter's judgment. Unfortunately, Lisbeth never returned home. She had gone missing in the Mexican border city of Matamoros. The next day, August 10, 2020, Maria Rubio reported her daughter as a missing person to the Brownsville Police Department. The Brownsville Police Department immediately set out to find Lisbeth. However, because she went missing in Mexico, they had to inform the Mexican authorities. On August 11, 2020, a horrific discovery was made in Matamoros, Mexico. A woman's body lay face up in a grassy field along Libramiento Emilio Potes Gil in Matamoros. The area had earned notoriety for deadly robberies. However, this woman had been tortured and killed in a particularly brutal manner. The body was partially clothed and lying face up with a large rock beside her. She had a fatal head injury. Her scalp had been peeled off and her teeth had been forcefully removed. She also had bruises all over her body. Soon enough, the Tamaulipas State Police were informed about the body, and following information from the Brownsville Police Department, she was identified as Lisbeth Flores, the 23-year-old American citizen who had gone missing the previous day. Matamoros, Mexico had been plagued by crime and insecurity due to the presence of rival cartel groups. The Northeast Cartel and the Gang from Hell were 2 of the most notorious gangs around. They'd been fighting for control of the area and extorting, kidnapping, and killing people. At first, the police thought that Lisbeth may have been caught in their crossfire or targeted for ransom, but there was no evidence to support that. The attack also spurred speculation that robbery might not have been the motive, since the place was known for murders. However, authorities refrained from speculation and focused on gathering more information. Further investigation revealed that the cause of her death was a severe head injury caused by a large rock, the same rock that was found at the crime scene. The autopsy confirmed that she was tortured extensively before she was killed. Because she was an American citizen that was murdered in a foreign country, the FBI got involved in the investigation. Both U.S. and Mexican law enforcement agencies collaborated to seek justice for the Flores family and their community. When Lisbeth's mother heard the news, she was devastated.
At the top tonight, a Brownsville family is asking for help. Their daughter found dead in Matamoros. The victim's mother speaking with Channel 5 about what she thinks happened and who might be responsible.
Le tuve que hablar a la policía aquí de Brownsville para que me ayudara, para que ellos abrieran una investigación si la buscaran para dónde se encontraba. Pero no recibieron ningún tipo de ayuda de nadie. Ella tenía signos de violencia. Ella fue torturada cruelmente. Yo no sé quién le hizo eso, porque eso no se le hace. Pues ella era una niña que ella era de su trabajo a la casa. Sí, yo quiero justicia por lo que le hicieron a mi hija. Mi hija no merecía esto.
She said she wanted to see her body and bring it back to the U.S. so she could personally confirm her identity. She expressed her grief for what her daughter had endured in her last moments. Losing a child is akin to having your heart torn asunder. Lisbeth's heartbroken mother cried. I'm overwhelmed with sorrow for what they subjected my daughter to, Rubio conveyed in Spanish to Telemundo. The manner in which they abandoned her, the agony my daughter endured there in that moment, that's what wounds me deeply. She passionately called for justice to be served for her daughter. She was so young. She had her whole life ahead of her, specifically because she had 2 children, Rubio emphasized. I want those responsible for my daughter's suffering, every single person involved in her death, to be held accountable. Rubio's plea must have motivated the authorities because on August 18, 2020, the police arrested a suspect in the case, Braulio Trevino Martinez. On Tuesday, August 18, 2020, authorities in Matamoros apprehended Braulio Trevino Martinez at his home in the subdivision of Molinos del Rey, Mexico, in connection with the horrific murder of Lisbeth Flores. Martinez, a 39-year-old Mexican national, was known to Lisbeth and her family, as well as her boyfriend, although the exact nature of their relationship remains unknown. Martinez became the prime suspect due to a trail of evidence, including fingerprints on her clothing and body, as well as cell phone records leading from Brownsville, Texas to Matamoros, Mexico. Lisbeth's cell phones guided authorities to Martinez's residence in Mexico. The authorities were able to confirm from phone records that it was Martinez who called to allegedly lure her to Mexico to rob her. It's unknown why Martinez chose Lisbeth to rob, especially considering she didn't have much money. Investigators believe that the horrific nature of her death was an attempt to make it look like it was carried out by the local cartel. The police were able to identify Martinez's fingerprints quickly because Martinez was a registered offender in Texas who had served time in prison. Texas jail records showed that in 2006, Martinez was in prison for offenses involving a minor. He pleaded guilty to 2 counts of assault and was subsequently incarcerated in Huntsville State Prison for 4 years. At that time, he lived in Brownsville. Martinez finished his sentence and was released in 2010. At the time of his arrest in Mexico, Martinez also had an outstanding warrant for his arrest in Georgia. During his stint in prison, his fingerprints and DNA were collected and stored in the state's database. Therefore, the FBI simply needed to retrieve this information from the state's records and gave it to the Mexican authorities, who then matched it with the evidence collected from the crime scene. This database proved invaluable in swiftly identifying Martinez as a suspect in Lisbeth's murder. On Monday, August 24, 2020, the Tamaulipas State Prosecutor's Office officially filed murder charges against Braulio Martinez. The judge secured a ruling that ordered Martinez to remain in custody while awaiting trial. If convicted, Martinez could face up to life imprisonment. No information on his trial date can be found at this time. Martinez, of course, is innocent until proven guilty. Carmen Flores, Lisbeth's sister, took to Facebook to disclose that Martinez had sent her text messages before going to jail, where he denied knowing where her sister was. She expressed a bittersweet sense of relief knowing that he'd been arrested. Carmen believed that Martinez must be held accountable for his alleged actions, although she felt that any punishment he received would never truly suffice for the harm inflicted upon her sister. However, she emphasized that she'd rather him in jail than on the streets hurting someone else. Carmen stated that, he's a liar. A scoundrel who even texted me saying he couldn't find Lisbeth anywhere in Matamoros, but he left enough evidence. This man is the culprit, and people must accept him and stop gossiping. There's a very great God, and everything is paid in this world. While all this was ongoing, Lisbeth Flores' remains remained in a morgue in northeastern Mexico, awaiting repatriation to Texas for her final resting place. To cover funeral expenses and support her children's future, her family initiated a GoFundMe campaign. I'm still trying to raise money for my sister's funeral. My family has been so stressed because we still haven't raised enough money and her body is decomposing. Carmen Flores wrote on her Facebook account. If you find it in your heart the need to donate in our time of need, we would greatly appreciate it. Anything will help. Thank you in advance, and God bless you. Juan Carlos Cue Vega, Mexico's consul in Brownsville, Texas, disclosed that the Mexican government has extended an offer of assistance to Maria Rubio in repatriating her daughter, Lisbeth Flores, before a local funeral parlor stepped in to provide aid to the grieving family. Vega further mentioned that the funeral home could take care of everything once they completed the process of obtaining clearance from U.S. Customs and Border Protection to facilitate the return of Lisbeth's body. There's no information on what happened to the father of her children or whether he was ever investigated in connection to the plot. The news of Lisbeth Flores' tragic fate deeply touched her hometown of Brownsville, where she had strong community ties despite her life ending in Matamoros. The community rallied together to support the Flores family during their challenging period. They organized vigils to honor Lisbeth's memory. With tearful embraces, they shared stories celebrating her vibrant and warm personality. Local businesses also contributed by donating to funds for Lisbeth's children, now left without their mother. Lisbeth's 2 children now live with their grandmother, Maria Rubio. While this heart-wrenching tragedy occurred in Brownsville, its impact has reverberated across 2 nations. Lisbeth Flores' unsettling fate has drawn attention to the often perilous situations faced by women living along the border. Advocates for women's safety in border communities stated that much more needs to be done to protect young mothers like Lisbeth. They viewed her tragic death as part of a troubling trend of violence against women in the region. Lisbeth Flores' story serves as a reminder to trust your instincts and seek help when something feels wrong. Lisbeth Flores called her mother from Matamoros and told her about the situation. This contributed to the early search for her and the quick arrest of Martinez. If found guilty, what sentence do you think would be suitable for Martinez, considering his criminal background? What do you think should be done to prevent this sort of tragedy from happening again in the future? Please be careful when traveling to unfamiliar or dangerous places. Always reach out to someone you trust or contact the authorities if you're unsure of what's going on. November 16, 2009 was a day that shattered all notions of security for 28-year-old Gita Alak, a dedicated mother and diligent professional living in Greenford, London. On her way back from work to reunite with her 2 sons, she was ruthlessly attacked by unknown assailants and abandoned with severe injuries. As she fought for her life, residents of the quiet suburban community were left reeling in shock. What hidden motives lay beneath the attack? Was this a random act of violence, or a meticulously planned murder and a web of deception and betrayal? Nestled in the heart of West London lies Greenford, an old-fashioned suburb known for its tree-lined streets and large parks. With a current population of around 50,000 residents, this charming town offers a tranquil living experience balanced with a proximity to bustling city life. Greenford is celebrated for its rich cultural diversity and has a significant population of ethnic minorities. The town has consistently maintained a low crime rate, well below the national UK average. However, beneath this seemingly peaceful facade, a shocking and cold-blooded crime unfolded, challenging the very essence of this community's perceived safety. Gita Alak was born on April 4, 1981 in the UK to parents Lakwinder Singh Shin and Nardesh Kumari Shin, who had immigrated from India. Gita grew up in the bustling suburb of Southall in a large and loving family with 2 sisters and 2 brothers. As the cherished daughter of hardworking Sikh parents, she carried with her the values of dedication and family. When Gita was just 17 years old, she met and fell in love with 20-year-old Harpreet Alak, also known as Sunny. Born in 1978 in Punjab, India, Sunny had recently arrived in the UK. However, Gita's parents disapproved of their relationship. Sunny was from a poor Sikh family and had entered the UK illegally. On top of that, he was already suspected by Indian police of involvement in a series of crimes back in Punjab. But Gita was consumed by the passion of first love. Despite her parents' opposition, she and Sunny eloped to Europe while she was still a teenager. They got married in Belgium in 1999 and later returned to London after their first son was born in 2001. Gita went on to have another son and later began working as a receptionist at Sunrise Radio, an Asian radio station based in London. Her world revolved around her two children, 10-year-old Karam and 8-year-old Tejdeep, for whom she tirelessly strived to provide the best life possible. Colleagues and friends described Gita as an uncomplaining individual who always put the needs of her children before her own. According to her friend Seema Sida from Sunrise Radio, Gita would often say, "I've made my own bed and I have to live with it," expressing her determination and independence. Unfortunately, nobody could have guessed the struggles Gita had been living with or the tragic fate that awaited her. Gita's relationship with Sunny started as a passionate romance, but as time went on, a dark undercurrent began to surface. Sunny's initial charm gave way to violent and aggressive tendencies. He exhibited bouts of anger that grew increasingly frequent and intense, displaying a pattern of toxic behaviors. Sunny would belittle Gita at every turn and often in public, undermining her self-esteem and confidence. As a result of this emotional abuse, Gita grew timid and reserved. She didn't confide in anyone about her situation, but her colleagues at the radio station sensed that someone was harassing her. In January 2009, when Sunny was away on a trip to India, Gita took a brave step and moved to Greenford with her children. During this time, Sunny would frequently call Gita, obsessively inquiring if she was involved with someone else. He grew so suspicious that he even hacked into her Facebook account. He also confronted Gita's sister Anita, accusing Gita of having a boyfriend and threatening the whole family. Finally, in August 2009, Gita filed for divorce, detailing Sunny's violent tendencies throughout their marriage. She was seeking a fresh start. On the ill-fated day of November 16, 2009, Gita boarded a bus to Brond Avenue to pick up her sons from the childminder before their short walk home. As she walked to the childminder's house, two unknown men accosted her. One was armed with a machete, and he launched a sudden and ruthless attack. Gita bravely tried to shield herself, using her right hand to protect her head. However, in a single powerful blow, her hand was severed, an act of unspeakable violence. In a mere 3 minutes, Gita was left with severe wounds to her face and skull, while her attackers fled the scene. A passerby found her bleeding on the sidewalk and immediately called emergency services. Gita was taken to Charing Cross Hospital in a critical condition. Unfortunately, the injuries inflicted upon her were fatal, and she tragically passed away 3 hours later in the hospital. Pathologist Dr. Ashley Fegan-Earle, who conducted Gita's autopsy, stated that she'd suffered at least 4 forceful and rapid blows to her head, causing uncommonly serious injuries. He expressed doubt that any medical intervention could have saved her life. Her hand, severed during the attack, was deemed a defensive injury. Dr. Fegan-Earle emphasized that the assailant had used a heavy and exceptionally sharp weapon for the attack, noting the rarity of finding such weapons. The horrific attack on this young and devoted mother left the community in disbelief and mourning. The investigation began swiftly as authorities responded to the shocking crime scene. Investigators knew that the nature of the attack suggested a personal vendetta, so they delved into her personal life, relationships, and recent activities. Interviews with Gita's family revealed her impending divorce with Sunny, giving the husband a potential motive. Their suspicions were further strengthened by the fact that Sunny had incessantly harassed Gita and even threatened her sister Anita. But Sunny had an alibi for the night of the murder. He was in a pub drinking all night, right in front of the CCTV camera. Sunny also seemed disconsolate with grief and rage, vowing to find whomever had murdered his wife. The police had no choice but to take him off the suspect list. They explored other leads, but only found dead ends. Just as progress was stalling, a man approached the police, claiming to be a witness to the crime. 30-year-old Jaswant Dillon told the police that 2 men had ambushed Gita suddenly when she got off the bus and started walking toward the childminder's house. One was on the lookout, while the other had a big sharp blade with which he hacked at Gita. Dillon described the attack in detail and said it was over in a matter of seconds. Dillon also led the police to the Grand Union Canal in Slough, Berkshire, where the attackers had disposed of the weapon in a jacket. This was a major breakthrough in the investigation. Detectives were able to recover the weapon, a 14-inch machete. They also found a blood-stained jacket and were able to track down the owner, 18-year-old Sher Singh, who'd arrived in the UK 4 months earlier from Punjab, India, on a student visa. The turning point came when detectives discovered that the 14-inch machete used in the assault was a distinctive and rare Brazilian-made weapon, available in a shop half a mile from Sunny's residence in Hounslow, West London. CCTV footage at the store showed 3 individuals purchasing that machete. All 3 buyers were tracked down. 2 of them still had their machetes at home, but the 3rd buyer didn't. And this was none other than Gita's husband, Sunny Al-Lak. Due to this, Sunny immediately became the prime suspect again. More questions arose in the mind of the authorities as they examined the evidence closely. They quickly became suspicious of Jaswant Dhillon, who'd come forward as the witness. Even if he hadn't witnessed the attack, how could he know where the murder weapon had been dumped? It finally emerged that Dhillon was one of Sunny's friends, a detail that left the authorities amazed and shocked. Was their witness a killer in disguise? Authorities also discovered that the young student Sher Singh, whose jacket was retrieved from the canal with the machete, had received his student visa with Sunny's help. Not only that, Sunny had also helped Sher Singh find housing and a job after arriving in London. With all these details linking their 3 suspects, investigators finally put together how the crime had unfolded. Enraged at Gita for filing for divorce, Sunny had recruited his friends to attack his wife while he drank at a pub in full view of CCTV cameras to set up a deliberate alibi. Sher Singh and Jaswant Dhillon had waited for Gita near the street to the childminder's house, as instructed by Sunny. Sher Singh was the one who suddenly appeared behind Gita and barbarically attacked her with the machete, severing her hand. Dhillon had been on the lookout, making sure no one was around. The pair then fled the scene, with Sher Singh dumping his bloodied clothes and the murder weapon in the Grand Union Canal in Slough. Sunny Al-Lak, Sher Singh, and Jaswant Dhillon were all charged with the murder of Gita Al-Lak and put on trial at the Old Bailey Courthouse in London in November 2010. Gita's family, present at the court, held their pictures, demanding justice for her tragic demise. During the trial, Dhillon claimed to barely know Sunny and that he'd innocently been taken along to the murder. But phone evidence showed that they'd been in contact before the attack and on the day itself. It also emerged that Sunny had been involved in drug peddling and immigration scams while in the UK. He decided to recruit someone from this circle of connections to murder Gita. In a room full of Punjabi men, he had callously offered £5,000 to anyone who was willing to carry out the attack. It was in this room where Sher Singh, who struck the fatal blows with his machete, had volunteered to do the deed. Sunny's behavior during the trial underscored his callous and cunning nature. He often looked up the gallery where Gita's devastated family sat, smiling and grinning at them, displaying an utter lack of remorse. Even when reprimanded by the judge, his demeanor remained detached, showing a disregard for the severity of his actions. Throughout the trial, the 3 men claimed their innocence. Sunny even described Gita as his first love and said he had nothing to do with her murder. On the basis of all evidence presented in court, Judge David Paget remarked, "It's hard to imagine a more cold-blooded way of killing someone." On December 3, 2010, Sunny was convicted of masterminding Gita's murder and was sentenced to life with a minimum term of 28 years. Sher Singh, who wielded the machete, and Jaswant Dhillon, who acted as a lookout, also received life sentences with a minimum term of 22 years. About 8 years after the conviction, on August 28, 2018, Sunny Al-Lak and Sher Singh were repatriated to India under a prisoner transfer program. They were moved to the Patiala Central Jail in Punjab to serve the remainder of their life sentences. Sunny had 20 more years, and Sher Singh had 14 more years before parole eligibility. In a shocking turn of events, they were granted early release just a few months later in 2019. They showcased their liberty on Facebook, celebrating with large gatherings of men and proudly taking photos with smiling companions. In one video, Sunny was seen firing shots from a pistol into the sky at an outdoor event. One of the photos showed him standing smugly next to a marijuana field. Back in London, Gita's sister, 41-year-old Anita Shin, expressed her frustration and outrage at the murderer's swift release in India, wondering about the purpose of the trial and high-security imprisonment in Britain. Gita's family, already mourning her loss, were even more distressed that her killers were roaming freely. Anita lodged a complaint with the Ministry of Justice, and after initial skepticism, officials were astounded to uncover the truth. She received a letter from Justice Secretary Robert Buckland apologizing for the profound distress caused by the premature release of the duo. He informed her that he'd raised the issue with Indian government officials and reassured her that measures were being taken to ensure the culprits complete their remaining sentences. Although Sunny and Sher Singh are reported to have been reincarcerated, there's no proper record of their detention or whereabouts. According to some sources, the criminals are often given weekend furloughs to visit friends and family. Other sources state that they merely need to check in at the prison daily before being allowed to move freely in society. Sunny's strong connections in Punjab and influential relatives might have facilitated his liberty in India by potentially using money to influence the situation. Anita Shin expressed concerns about the still-at-large murderers, questioning whether she should wait for Sunny to come to England with a fake passport and potentially harm them before actions taken. She emphasized his prior illegal entry into Britain and the fear of it happening again, and criticized the UK government for sending back murderers to freedom. A British government spokesperson acknowledged the reports as deeply troubling, requesting urgent communication with Indian authorities regarding the issue. However, the Indian Justice Department has not responded to these requests yet. The tragic case of Geeta Aulak unveils the depths of human cruelty orchestrated by her possessive and jealous husband, Harpreet Sunny Aulak. His callous demeanor in court reflected a deeply ingrained chauvinistic mindset and a willingness to take a life for personal gains. Virendra Sharma, an MP of the Labour Party in the United Kingdom, warned against linking this to cultural roots, stating it was the actions of individuals and not reflective on their background or culture. Geeta's family, especially her children, are profoundly affected. Her mother, Nardeshan, has vowed to uphold Geeta's legacy by nurturing her sons with love and respect. This case serves as a somber reminder to combat toxic traits and protect the innocent, hoping justice prevails. Geeta's memory should inspire a collective resolve to fight violence and misogyny at every step.
I prayed and I prayed to bring my baby home. Just bring my baby home to me. I knew something had happened. I was getting ready to go into work. Someone texted me, called the police, Nikki's gone.
17-year-old Nikki Kuhnhausen was proud of her identity as a transgender. She lived away from her mother, Lisa Woods, but she was always in touch with her. On June 6, 2019, Nikki failed to answer a call from her mother. When Lisa didn't hear back from Nikki, she could tell right away that something was terribly wrong. She contacted the police, but weeks passed by with no sign of Nikki. Each day that passed meant the chances to find Nikki alive and well were decreasing. There were no leads until investigators discovered a Snapchat conversation Nikki had had with a man. What was the mysterious chat about? What happened to Nikki? Vancouver, located in the Pacific Northwest, is a vibrant city known for its natural beauty and urban charm. With stunning mountains, lush forests, and the sparkling Pacific Ocean, it offers a perfect blend of outdoor adventures and city living. Diverse neighborhoods, bustling farmers markets, and a lively arts scene add to its appeal. Vancouver's temperate climate allows for year-round enjoyment of its picturesque surroundings. Whether exploring parks, hiking trails, or enjoying the waterfront, living in Vancouver promises a fulfilling and dynamic lifestyle. It was here in Vancouver that flyers started popping up everywhere in town in June of 2019. The flyers read, "Have you seen me?" along with some pictures of the missing person, Nikki Kuhnhausen. Nicholas Kuhnhausen, born on July 6, 2001 in Vancouver, Washington, decided to embrace her true identity as transgender while in the 6th grade and began using the name Nikki. This journey of self-discovery was supported and accepted by her mother, Lisa Woods, who stood by her side throughout the process. From a very young age, Nikki knew who she was and never had any doubts about her identity. Nikki was described by her friends as cheerful, caring, and full of energy. She was a natural performer and had an infectious enthusiasm for life. Nikki's vibrant personality made people gravitate to her, and she quickly became a cherished friend in her social circles. Nikki was undoubtedly popular, especially known for her multiple talents. Among her many talents, her makeup skills stood out, and she was particularly admired for them among the cheerleaders. Her love for makeup extended beyond personal interest. She dreamt of pursuing a career as a stylist for her idol, the famous singer Nicki Minaj. Nicki's admiration for Nicki Minaj's music was evident, and she often showcased her passion by posting TikToks where she lip-synced along to the artist's popular songs. While Nicki had many friends, Lisa Woods, her mother, knew her better than anyone else. And surely, Nicki was also very loyal to her mom. Even though Nicki was just 17, she'd been living independently away from her parents for a while. Nicki lived a transient lifestyle, staying at different friends' places, so Lisa didn't always know where she was. But Nicki always made sure to check in with her mom. However, they talked every day, sometimes more than once, and their mother-daughter relationship was different from what most people have. It was almost like their roles were switched. Nicki would check in on her mother, who'd struggled with substance abuse and mental health issues in the past. Lisa had been working at Walmart for about 6 years and would talk to Nicki once a day before starting her shift. One night, when Lisa's messages to Nicki went unanswered, she had a feeling that something was wrong. According to her friends, Nicki left their apartment in the early morning hours around 6 a.m. She told her roommates that she was going to meet someone she'd been communicating with on Snapchat. The day went by, but Nicki never came back. As there was no sign of her even at the end of the day, her friends grew increasingly concerned. They attempted to reach out to her through various means, but received no response. Minutes were quickly turning into hours, and soon enough days, since Nicki went missing. Lisa's attempts to reach out to her daughter through calls and texts remained unanswered. Despite the worry and uncertainty, Lisa clung to hope, praying that Nicki would suddenly return home with some wild excuse for her absence. Lisa reached out to Nicki's best friend, Taylor Watts. Taylor had a long history with Nicki, having known her since they were children. Feeling equally worried and helpless, Taylor teamed up with another friend named Ariel. Together, they spent their evenings driving around Vancouver, desperately searching for any sign or clue that could lead them to Nicki's whereabouts. As the days went by and June 10, 2019 approached, Lisa's hope began to wane. She couldn't bear to wait any longer and decided to take action. Lisa made the decision to involve the authorities, calling the police to report Nicki as missing. The news was slowly spreading among the activist groups. Nobody had heard from Nicki for days, and everyone could see that was a bad sign. According to activist Devin Davis Williamson,
when trans people go missing, they're usually found deceased.
As each day passed by, the possibility of finding Nicki in good health was beginning to fade. However, on June 19, 2019, Nicki's friend Tiffany McConnell came up with a new piece of information. She contacted police officer Brendan DeGraw and shared details about a Russian man relevant to the case. After a few days, on June 23, 2019, Lisa, Nicki's mother, called 911 and spoke with Officer Jake Carlo, stating that Nicki had used her roommate, Faith Fieldis' phone to communicate with her intended date. He was a 25-year-old construction worker, and his name was David Bogdanov. The entire police department was alert and active in the case. Detective David Jensen from the Vancouver Police Department spoke to Lisa to verify the details about the phone situation. It was then that Lisa brought up the involvement of Snapchat. Nicki had contacted David using Snapchat. It was a great lead. The next day, Detective Jensen arranged a meeting with Faith and Tiffany, and they met on June 25, 2019, to discuss and verify the details. With some pieces in place, things were looking up for the detectives. They had the suspect's name, but they needed much more than that. Snapchat is rather tricky. The messages are usually erased after they're read, and in most cases, there's no way to know more about a person unless they decide to share that information with you. So the very next day, Detective Jensen urgently contacted Snapchat for help. By now, the police had obtained a search warrant for Snapchat, and sure enough, they received what they'd hoped for. The detectives now had the geolocations from David Bogdanov's phone on the night of Nicki's disappearance. The data showed David was at his brother Stan's house and near an area south of where Nicki was staying. On June 28, 2019, it had been 22 days since Nicki's disappearance. She was nowhere to be found. Therefore, now that the detectives had all the information they required, they finally made an attempt to contact the last person who they believed had last seen her. Their attempts were initially unsuccessful. Police were unable to contact David for 3 more months. It was October 2nd, 2019. By now, Nikki's family and friends had lost the hope that they'd find her alive and well. Yet they wanted to know the truth and seek justice for her. So when the detectives informed them that David was finally reachable, it was the best news they'd heard in months. The detectives got in touch with their prime suspect and conducted an interview.
All right. This is Detective David Jensen with Vancouver Police, and I have with me David Bogdanov. Do I have your consent to record this conversation?
Yep. I saw her walking. I walked up to her, asked her why she's walking alone in the middle of the night, and she said that she had some big fight with her boyfriend, and she's really upset, and I was just trying to be a nice guy, you know?
Everyone wants to be a nice guy, but not all humans are as nice as they think they are. This seemed to be true for David, too. He explained to the detectives that Nikki was with them for a while, and they both did some shots of vodka together. Then, while they were engaging in an intimate encounter, Nikki revealed that she was biologically male. This took David by surprise. He felt disgusted and asked Nikki to leave his vehicle immediately. Then he claimed Nikki left, and he didn't see her again after that. However, it was hard to believe his story. Enough time had passed for him to come up with a plausible theory of his encounter with Nikki. But the detectives believed that there was more to the story. However, without any evidence, there was no way to charge him. Meanwhile, detectives were still trying to search for Nikki. Everyone had accepted her fate by now, so they had hoped to find her body soon if she was, in fact, dead. The search for Nikki stalled until December 9th, 2019, when a hiker saw something on a remote road on Larch Mountain. As he inched closer to have a clearer look, he realized the horror of what he was actually looking at. There were human remains lying on the ground in front of him. Along with the remains, several other items were discarded, including multiple rings and a jacket. Investigators matched the rings to social media images and determined they were Nikki Kuhnhausen's. The jacket found on the mountain was also determined to have belonged to Nikki Kuhnhausen. The investigators also discovered a phone cord with strands of hair still stuck in a knot alongside the remains. Nikki had finally been found after 6 months. Her body was sent for an autopsy. Soon, the medical examiner determined the cause of death to be strangulation. Why would someone want to kill Nikki? Even if David was a suspect, what could have been the reason to end her life like that? Nikki's mother, Lisa Woods, had an answer for this. She believed that Nikki was killed because she was transgender. It was time to have a conversation with David again. The detectives knew he was hiding something, and they needed to extract that information. So they scheduled an interview with him.
All right. Do you understand that this room is being audio and video recorded? Sure. So I'm going to get by and bring her with me. Get my coat off. All right. You're not going to flip out on us or anything? You all right? Okay.
So far, you can see the interrogators trying to ease him into this conversation and build a rapport, but David doesn't look open to talk. He had his head down the entire time and doesn't make eye contact with the detectives. David seems reserved, but detectives can tell he's hiding something, judging by his tone and body language.
What happened on the trip? That trip took about an hour round trip from Rutgers House, past Larch Mountain, up some logging roads, and then back again.
Finally, since he couldn't provide any clear answers or explanations, detectives ended the interview. He was subsequently arrested for Nikki's murder. On December 17, 2019, David Bogdanoff was charged with murder in the second degree and malicious harassment.
We, the jury, find the above named defendant guilty of the crime of murder in the second degree as charged in count 1. Verdict form count 2. We, the jury, find the above named defendant guilty of the crime of malicious harassment.
A hate crime in Washington. He pleaded not guilty. After his arrest in Nikki Kuhnhausen's case, activists in the area were motivated to advocate for the prohibition of the trans panic defense, which involved using a victim's gender identity to justify acts of violence. The resultant law, known as Nikki's Law, received significant backing and was successfully enacted in Washington state. At David Bogdanoff's trial in August 2021 in Clark County Superior Court, he took the stand and claimed that he killed Nikki Kuhnhausen in self-defense. He said that when he found out she was transgender and asked her to leave his van, she went for his gun, which frightened him so badly that he had to use force. One thing led to another, and he had to kill Nikki to save his own life. It turned out that David used the cell phone charger to kill Nikki. He testified that he'd meant to keep the cord around her shoulders to keep her away from him, but during the hustle, the cord had slipped around her neck. After leaving her body in the mountains nearby, he bought a one-way plane ticket to Ukraine and asked a friend to help him to get rid of his car, as mentioned in the trial. He came back to the U.S. about 6 weeks afterward. David also mentioned that upon discovering her true identity, he felt disgusted and found her and other LGBTQIA+ individuals disturbing. Jurors found David Bogdanoff guilty of murder in the second degree and malicious harassment, which is a hate crime in Washington. Clark County Superior Court Judge David Gregerson could not control his emotions for the teenage child who had lost her life. He said that he was struck by the darkness in this case. On September 9, 2021, David Bogdanoff was sentenced to 20 years in prison. While Nikki lost her life, her legacy lives on through Nikki's Law, which continues to help countless individuals in the trans community. Her death served as a catalyst for change, and Nikki's Law ensured that her death was not in vain. Nikki's friend Taylor Watts said, "I want her just remembered as Nikki. Loving, caring, sweet, happy, funny. She'd make all of you laugh." Even though Nikki's gone, her family and friends can keep her memory alive. Today's case has shed light on the increasing hate crimes and violence against transgender individuals. But some questions remain unanswered. Do you believe it was a case of predation from the beginning, or did he kill her because of self-hate?
When you lose a loved one through a violent act, and there's no one charged with the crime, you often wonder if the criminal wakes up in the morning, thinks that he got away with murder.
We always hope that justice can be served quickly, but the reality is that isn't always possible.
On February 29, 1992, in the heart of San Diego, California, 84-year-old Angela Klein-Sorge was found deceased in her residence at 5600 Gaines Street, near Linda Vista Road. An investigation revealed that she'd been assaulted prior to being stabbed to death. Despite the identification of possible suspects, the case eventually went cold. It would take a mix of cutting-edge DNA testing and tireless detective work for Angela's cold case to experience a major break 25 years later in 2017. However, at the onset of the initial investigation, two haunting questions emerged. Who could harbor such malevolence towards an innocent, defenseless elderly woman? And what reason, if any, could there have been for taking her life in such a violent manner? In San Diego, California, a bustling community of over 1.3 million people, history and modernity blend seamlessly. Pristine beaches and rich landmarks set the stage for an engaging backdrop. Balboa Park is where the famous San Diego Zoo can be found, and is also home to numerous art galleries, artist studios, museums, and gardens. In 1992, in a seemingly safe haven within the city, Angela Klein-Sorge's tragic end at 84 remains a reminder of human vulnerability, even in serene settings. Angela was born as Angela Whitcomb in Mönchengladbach, Germany, on June 11, 1907. She then emigrated to the United States, where she met her husband, Paul Kleinsorge. The couple moved to California, started a landscaping business, and raised their family in a modest home in the quiet San Diego suburb of Linda Vista. The couple lived the American dream alongside their daughter Hetty and their son Roland, and tried to give back to their community. The Kleinsorges were founding members of the House of Germany at the International Cottages in Balboa Park. They took tremendous pride in their German-American heritage. Paul died in 1970. Angela continued to live at the family's home, where, as she grew older, she settled into a quiet life. She had a daily routine that included waking up at 6 a.m. for coffee and breakfast, watching soap operas, and working in her garden. She was beloved by her children, family, and friends. On the morning of February 29, 1992, Hetty Kleinsorge, who had spoken to her mother the day before, as she regularly did, called her mother 3 times, but received no response. She knew something was wrong. Hetty rushed over to her mother's home, and immediately she noticed something was amiss when she saw the garage light on and the blinds shuttered. When Hetty went inside the house, she made a grisly discovery. Her mother's body lay lifeless on the floor in her bedroom. Angela had been assaulted and stabbed several times in her neck. In a state of shock, Hetty rushed and dialed 911 to report her mother's murder. Soon sirens rang throughout the neighborhood, and detectives from the San Diego Police Department arrived at the scene. Along with the forensic analysts, they began to examine the crime scene. According to the investigators, the killer had entered Angela's home through a window and attacked her. Based on the evidence that the killer left behind, they also found foreign DNA in the house, though information regarding where they found it and the nature of the DNA was never released to the public. It was only later revealed that foreign DNA was discovered at the crime scene in the form of unidentified genetic material, adding a new dimension to the investigation. At the time, authorities said regular DNA testing didn't match anyone in a statewide offender database. As time went on, the case remained unsolved due to the lack of leads, and eventually it went cold. However, hope reignited when, in July of 2016, the San Diego Police Department and the District Attorney's Office submitted the case to the Department of Justice with a request for familial DNA testing. Familial DNA searches allow investigators to search offender databases with wider parameters, identifying people who are likely to be close relatives of the person who may have committed a crime. When the DNA from Angela's murder was tested, it showed a high probability that a certain individual named Jeffrey Falls was the murderer. However, the familial DNA typing results also showed that there was a high likelihood that Angela's murderer could also be a brother of Jeffrey Falls. Through further investigation, it was determined that Jeffrey Falls had one living brother. SDPD was able to obtain DNA samples from the living brother, and he was eliminated as a suspect. Once his brother was eliminated, police were now sure that Jeffrey was the culprit, so they looked further into his past to see whether they could uncover any more evidence against him. They learned that in 1992, when Angela had been murdered, Falls had been 28 and had been her neighbor at the time, information that only further strengthened their suspicions. However, when they looked up Falls to make an arrest, they learned he died in 2006 at the age of 43 in a motorcycle accident, hindering their quest for justice. To be sure of his involvement, SDPD then received tissue samples from the coroner to cross-check against the sample from the crime scene. The crime lab was able to obtain a partial DNA profile from the deceased suspect's tissue that matched the crime scene sample, pointing to Falls as the murderer. The likelihood ratio for kinship between the crime scene sample and Falls was in the quadrillions, further evidence that investigators had solved the case. The results of this testing have brought a measure of closure to the victim's family more than 2 decades after her murder, said San Diego District Attorney Bonnie Dumanis. While familial DNA testing remains fairly rare in the U.S., this is an excellent example of how law enforcement can use the science as a way to propel an investigation forward and solve more crimes. District Attorney Dumanis and SDPD Chief Zimmerman led the press conference, joined by a slew of other top-level homicide investigators, cold case detectives, and forensic experts. Zimmerman praised the tireless work of cold case investigators, including now retired Reserve Detective Holly Irwin. The case had sat idle for over 2 decades. It would still be unsolved if it wasn't for the tenacious and persistent efforts of now retired Detective Holly Irwin, who became a reserve detective in order to continue working this case. Their relentless pursuit of justice will now allow the Kleinsorge family to close a very painful yet important chapter in their family history. According to Dumanis, the familial DNA testing results have brought a measure of closure to the Kleinsorge family. Although a rare procedure, Dumanis touted the science as a way to propel an investigation forward and solve more crimes. Angela's surviving daughter, Hetty, and son, Ronald Kleinsorge, attended the announcement. Hetty spoke about what this means for her family, pained for so long by her mother's murder. According to Hetty,
when you lose a loved one through a violent act, and there's no one charged with the crime, you often wonder if the criminal wakes up in the morning, thinks that he got away with murder, or if he even gives it a second thought. After 25 years, we have our answer.
While they have only partial closure, at least they know Mr. Falls no longer thinks he got away with the rape and murder of their mother. She thanked law enforcement for their work, especially Detective Irwin. It's through her dedication to solve her mother's case that they had the press conference. Thank you, Holly, she added. As we close the pages on this unsettling chapter in the true crime saga of Angela Kleinsorge, we're left with strong feelings and unanswered questions. This story is about seeking justice, closure, and the determination of those looking for answers. The case of Jeffrey Falls, the man who wrought unspeakable horrors upon Angela, invites reflection on the very nature of justice. With Jeffrey unable to answer for his crime, the question remains, why did he commit this horrific act?
Ambulance, is the patient breathing? Been stabbed in the chest. Okay, is he breathing? Just about, I think, yes. Okay, is he awake? He is. He's still just about awake. Liam. Tell me exactly what happened. He just walked in the house and his lad jumped up and stabbed him.
It was always a bit of a mad guy, like you never really. It was you'd see him for like 2 days and then he'd disappear again.
On the 18th of July 2019, 18-year-old Liam Gray learned that he was a new dad, and so he made plans of starting a family with his partner. Part of his plan was to leave his home in Mansfield, Nottinghamshire, and relocate to Birmingham. The relocation was scheduled for August 2nd, 2019. So on August 1st, 2019, Liam Gray and 2 of his closest friends went out to drink, celebrate, and to say their last goodbyes. However, by the end of their celebrations and drinks, Liam had a knife in his chest and was battling for life in a hospital. Who could have stabbed Liam? And most importantly, why would anyone stab him? Mansfield is a bustling market town that serves as the administrative hub of Nottinghamshire's Mansfield district. Mansfield has a population of 110,000 as of the 2021 census. However, while its size is notable, Mansfield also carries a concerning reputation. It's earned the unfortunate distinction of being considered the most dangerous major town in Nottinghamshire. Out of 236 towns, villages, and cities, Mansfield finds itself among the top 20 most dangerous locations. In 2019, the overall crime rate reached 124 crimes per 1,000 residents in Mansfield, significantly higher than the Nottinghamshire average. This places Mansfield at the 25th spot among most dangerous towns across England, Wales, and Northern Ireland. Nevertheless, the residents are good-natured people. This is the town where Liam Gray and his family lived. Liam Gray, also known as Liam Peters, was born in 2001 in Mansfield, Nottinghamshire, United Kingdom. His mother, Joanne Peters, showered him with love and care that influenced his teenage years. Growing up in Mansfield, Liam was fortunate to have a close and affectionate bond with his granddad, John Barry, whom he lovingly called Pops. Sibling dynamics are often colored by clashes, and Liam's relationship with his elder sister, Paige Peters, was no exception.
It was a nightmare to me, obviously. He was my little brother and we just clashed so much. But we was really close as well. I was like his second mum, I think, because my mum had me quite young and Liam quite young. me and Liam was really close growing up.
Despite occasional clashes with Paige, Liam's connection with her remained steadfast. Music was a central part of Liam's life, and his kitchen often transformed into his dance floor. With the Backstreet Boys' I Want It That Way playing in the background, Liam would dance around with carefree abandon, showcasing his joyful and exuberant spirit. However, life wasn't without its challenges. Liam faced struggles at school. He wasn't cut out for academics. Liam's life was characterized by the deep friendships he formed, particularly with his best friend Reese.
I've known him all my life. We grew up together, went to school together and everything. We were just a bit crazy. Everyone would be like, oh, Liam and Reese are together. Yeah. As little lads, we used to fight with each other. Get ready. We'd fall out, but then we'd be best mates again anyway. I loved him, I did. There was a special place in my heart for that lad.
However, Liam's story took a surprising twist when he introduced Jonathan Treadgold of Kent Close Worksop, known also as Joe, into his circle of friends. Jonathan, who was the same age as Liam, grew up in foster homes and had a criminal past that often tended towards crime. Despite their differing backgrounds, Liam's compassionate nature led him to befriend Jonathan.
Do you know what? When I first met him, I thought he was alright, to be fair. He was a good lad. And we all just ended up getting on. It was kind of like, I don't know, Three Musketeers.
Besides great friends, he had a good partner too. His relationship with his partner Sean was remarkable.
We used to live on the same street that we lived on, but then I think he ended up being taken into care.
On July 18th, 2019, Liam's partner Sean gave birth to their daughter, Isla. At just 18 years old, the joy of fatherhood illuminated Liam's life, and he fully embraced the responsibilities that came with it. He wanted to replicate the love and care his family had shown him to his daughter. As Liam embraced fatherhood, he decided to move to Birmingham to better care for his daughter. He was determined to build a better life for Isla and himself.
Him moving out was always a big thing. He wanted to move out, wanted to get my own place. So then he can do what he wants and he can have it looking how he wants it and stuff like that. Do you know what I mean?
Liam made plans to leave for Birmingham on August 2nd, 2019. But before he left, he wanted to have one last day with his friends and say his goodbyes.
We planned to go to the pub, have a few drinks before Liam left to go to his new house. He was going literally the next day.
So on August 1st, 2019, Liam went drinking with Reese and Jonathan Treadgold at a house on Gladstone Street, Mansfield. Soon the friends moved from the house to a local pub. As it got late, the boys returned to the Gladstone Street house. Little did Liam know that this evening would forever alter the course of his life. Around the evening of August 1st, 2019, the emergency services of the United Kingdom, 999, received an emotional emergency call from John Berry, Liam's grandfather. John's emotional voice told the emergency services,
Ambulance, is the patient breathing?
He's been stabbed in the chest.
Okay, is he breathing?
Just about, I think, yes.
Okay, is he awake?
He is, he's still just about awake. Liam.
Tell me exactly
Liam.
what happened.
He just walked in the house and his lad jumped up to stab him.
You're doing really, really well. Now, do you know who the person is who stabbed him?
Yes,
What?
John Treadgold.
John?
Treadgold.
Liam had been stabbed and he needed an ambulance. John Berry provided first aid while waiting for an ambulance. Not long after, the paramedics arrived. They fought to keep Liam alive as they rushed him to Queen's Medical Centre in Nottingham. Despite their efforts, Liam succumbed to a single stab wound to his chest, leaving his family and friends shattered. A promising young life that had just become a father was tragically cut short. Following the incident, the police were called to the house and they began investigating what went wrong. The investigation kicked into gear as the police sought answers, piecing together the sequence of events that unfolded. The trio of friends had convened for what would tragically be their final gathering at a house on Gladstone Street, belonging to Grandpa John Berry. Starting with drinks in the garden, the trio's playful mood took a grim turn when they decided to extend their evening at a local pub, leading to a heated argument. The conflict was triggered by a video from Jonathan's sister's boyfriend. In the heat of the moment, Liam threatened Jonathan's sister's boyfriend, which caused an intense face-off between Liam and Jonathan. The group eventually returned to the Gladstone Street residence, each member arriving separately. Jonathan, arriving before the others, laid his hands on a carving knife from the house. The fateful moment arrived when Liam and Reese followed suit, joining Jonathan at the house. In a matter of minutes, the volatile situation reached its breaking point. With a swift, shocking motion, Jonathan thrust the knife into Liam's chest, striking his heart with a devastating blow. After stabbing Liam, Jonathan ran out from the back door, announced to John Barry and Reese that he'd stabbed Liam, and fled the scene.
John's come in, I've stabbed him, I've killed him. I was like, I thought, shut up, no, you haven't. And he ran off, and that's when I was like, okay, you might have actually done something here. I've gone in, and Liam stood there, and he's got a handful of tea towels off of Pops' radiator, stuck into his chest, and gone, ring an ambulance. And I pulled my phone out, and I didn't know what to do, so I rang the ambulance and gave my phone to Pop.
John Barry rushed in and saw a blood-stained large knife inside the kitchen, and when he entered the dining room, he saw Liam standing behind a sofa, clutching a tea towel to his chest, and his white t-shirt stained with blood. Liam requested assistance in calling an ambulance. This was when John Barry made the 999 call while providing first aid to his grandson. Jonathan ran to his mother, who was visiting a friend. He confessed to them that he'd stabbed and killed Liam. Jonathan was soon apprehended by the police.
It's moments in time, you're under arrest on suspicion of GBH. The answer to anything may harm thank you and mention one question. Some tricks may try and quote anything you do say may have evidence. Do you understand?
During his police interview, which was conducted by Superintendent Kevin Broadhead of Nottinghamshire Police, Jonathan claimed that Liam attacked him first and that he was only defending himself. He painted Liam as a bully who'd previously attacked him and inflicted injuries as well. But the evidence showed something different. The Nottinghamshire Police pieced together the puzzle, relying on crucial pieces of evidence, including CCTV footage and eyewitness accounts.
We received a call from a local business owner who had seen something suspicious. A male had actually climbed into the rear yard of a local sandwich shop, and he was challenged by the owner. It was through things he was telling the sandwich shop owner, making some sort of allegation of he'd been involved in some serious incidents, involved in some crime. Immediately, our call dispatchers linked that back to the scene that had already taken place at Gladstone Street.
Jonathan's initial claims of self-defense crumbled under the weight of the evidence presented. Despite his assertion that Liam was a violent aggressor, the facts told a different story. The proof showed a fight that started with a disagreement and got worse until it became deadly. CCTV footage captured Jonathan, Liam, and Reese walking to a nearby store to purchase alcohol before returning to the residence. Other footage also caught him fleeing from the scene after stabbing Jonathan. The police also interrogated Liam's best friend, Reese, who witnessed the event, and John Barry, who tried to save Liam. At the end of their investigation, Jonathan was charged with murder. However, for Liam's mom, Joanne, the heartbreak wasn't over, as she was told that Jonathan would be tried as a juvenile, even though he was 18. In February 2020, the wheels of justice began to turn as Jonathan Threadgold faced trial for the chilling murder of his friend, Liam Gray, in Nottingham Crown Court. After that, lawyers took turns presenting their arguments, and jurors intently listened, all in an attempt to unravel the complex web of events that led to that fateful day. Jonathan's decision to remain silent during his trial puzzled many. Throughout the legal proceedings, he displayed disruptive behavior and adamantly refused to take the witness stand. His belief seemed to be that by keeping quiet, he could somehow evade the consequences of his actions. Yet justice remained steadfast. The jurors, guided by their keen insight and dedication, saw through Jonathan's attempt to deceive through silence. The weight of the evidence spoke volumes, transcending the need for words. In February of 2020, following thoughtful deliberation, the jury reached a unanimous decision. Jonathan Threadgold was pronounced guilty for the murder of Liam. As the judge pronounced the guilty verdict, Jonathan's appearance remained unchanged. When queried about his thoughts on the verdict, his response was simple, just one word: sound. However, for the family of Liam, the emotions were written on their faces. When the judge announced that Jonathan was guilty, many of them shouted, yes. Consequently, Jonathan was sentenced to life in prison with a stipulated minimum of 16 years. Addressing Jonathan, Judge Gregory Dickinson stated, "Your actions were driven by anger, alcohol, and malice rather than fear. But beyond the minimum term, Judge Dickinson reminded all present that Jonathan's fate was not sealed with the minimum sentence. He emphasized there is a possibility of Jonathan serving a period longer than 16 years in custody, as he won't be considered for release by the parole board until he's deemed to no longer pose a risk to the public. Following the trial, Joanne Peters, Liam's mother, shared, "I believe the sentence falls short of what's deserved, though there's little more to add." Joanne and her friends wore t-shirts that featured Liam's image on the front. Loved ones gathered outside to respond to the jury's decision, and Joanne read a statement that began with, "The pain we've endured is something no family should bear. Our lives have been forever shattered." Addressing the courtroom, she expressed the heartache that no punishment could ever truly cover the immense void left by their loss. The chance to lay eyes on Liam, or to witness his name illuminating their phones, had been abruptly stolen from them by an unrelenting tragedy. However, she extended gratitude to all who had supported the family during their ordeal, and those who had worked tirelessly to try to save Liam's life. Adding her perspective, Liam's sister, 22-year-old Paige Peters, shared cherished memories of her younger sibling. "In my recollections, he'll forever be my little brother," she said. Paige portrayed Liam as a constant presence during times of need. Paige further noted that Jonathan's ill-conceived notion of evading accountability demonstrated a lack of remorse for the grave consequences of his actions. While a notable reduction in knife-related crimes has been achieved in Nottinghamshire, defying the national trend, it's believed that even one victim of knife crime is unacceptable. Knife crime is treated with utmost seriousness by Nottinghamshire police, and it's firmly believed by both us and the communities we serve that our streets should be devoid of weapons. In 2022, Liam's mother, Joanne Peters, recounted the distressing moments when she was informed of her son's murder in the documentary Britain's Deadliest Kids. During a heartfelt moment on the Discovery Plus show, Joanne shared a precious moment when she expressed her love to Liam while Liam was being taken to the hospital. She hoped he heard her words because that was their final conversation before he passed away. Joanne became emotional as she recalled the moment when she knew something bad had happened.
They didn't even have to say anything, I just knew, and I think I said to them, "He's gone, hasn't he?" And they said, "Yeah, we regret to tell you, that he has gone, yeah, he's passed away." My heart just shattered.
"He will still be a young man when he's released from prison, but my son is no longer with us," she cried. "We've missed out on seeing our son, brother, and father achieve his dreams due to a minor video-related argument, leaving us heartbroken." Joanne revealed that Jonathan remained quiet, offering no reasons for his actions. Some crime analysts and detectives have suggested that Jonathan killed Liam out of jealousy, that he had his life figured out and was about to start a family, while Joe still got into trouble with the police occasionally. Liam Gray's story showed how friendships and laughter can be replaced by anger and tragedy in the twinkling of an eye. What do you think of Jonathan's 16-year sentence? Is it adequate, or should he have been given a tougher sentence? On May 30th, 1999, 66-year-old Angela Spence Shaw did not turn up for a job at Peckham's Greenhouse in Little Compton, Rhode Island. This was highly unusual and raised concern among her coworkers, especially since Angela lived alone. Her best friend and coworker, Sarah Jane, decided to visit her and check on her. When Sarah reached Angela's house, the door was open, and she heard water running and the sound of an electric motor upstairs. Feeling unsettled, she followed the sounds to the second floor. But what Sarah found would haunt her forever. Angela was fully submerged in her bathtub with a plugged-in hairdryer in the water. Did Angela electrocute herself? Or was there a more disturbing explanation behind her death? Today's story takes us to the beautiful coastal town of Little Compton in Newport County, Rhode Island. Situated on the eastern coast of the United States, Little Compton is bordered by the Atlantic Ocean to the south and the Saguenay River to the west. As of 2020, the population of Little Compton was 3,600. Named after Little Compton in Warwickshire, England, The town is a serene and quiet place with many natural and historic wonders. It attracts lots of visitors, especially in the summer months. Little Compton has historically been so peaceful that since 1965, for more than 30 years, the town never recorded a single murder. However, that all changed in 1999 when the total crime offenses for the state spiked by 2.3% over the previous year. This was the town where 66-year-old Angela Spence Shaw lived alone. Angela Spence Shaw was born in 1933 in North London, England. She found love at an early age and got married. Family was at the heart of Angela's life, so when her husband Peter Van Cleve Shaw suggested they move to the United States, Angela didn't hesitate for a second. After moving to their new home, the couple set up and ran the Campus Shop, a bookstore on the Wheaton College campus in Norton, Massachusetts. Angela had 2 sons, Gerard and Justin, and the family lived happily. Tragedy struck when Peter died, but the widowed Angela found love once again and married a second time. With her new husband, Bernard Spence, she continued running the Campus Shop. In 1980, the couple decided to sell the shop and moved to Little Compton, Rhode Island. Shortly after that, Bernard too passed away. Despite the challenges of being widowed again, Angela carried herself with grace. She was a devoted mother to her 2 sons and soon became a grandmother to 4 lovely grandkids. Her love and care extended beyond her family to the local community in Little Compton as well. Angela would frequently volunteer to help the needy and was known as a passionate painter and birdwatcher. But what truly set Angela apart was her unwavering love for nature. She enjoyed gardening and spending time outside. So deep was her passion for gardening that, even at the age of 66, she happily took on a job at Peckham's greenhouse. It was here that she became friends with her colleague, Sarah Jane Craig. Angela loved her job so much that she never missed a day of work. So, on May 30th, 1999, when Angela didn't show up at the greenhouse, her co-workers were understandably worried. Her friend Sarah Jane decided to check on her at home. Little did the woman know what horror awaited her at Angela's house. When Sarah arrived at Angela's house, she noticed that the front door was unlocked, which was unusual. Concerned, she entered the house. The first floor was under renovation at the time, but everything appeared relatively normal, except for the sound of water running upstairs and the faint hum of an electric motor. As Sarah followed the noise up the stairs, what she saw traumatized her completely. Angela was submerged in the bathtub on the 2nd floor. She was wearing just a pink nightshirt, and it was evident that something terrible had occurred. Next to Angela in the bathtub, an electric hairdryer was left running in the water. Shocked and disoriented, Sarah collected herself enough to unplug the hairdryer, step outside, and call the police. Authorities from the Rhode Island State Police and the Little Compton Police Department quickly arrived at the scene. Little Compton hadn't witnessed a murder since 1965, and the police department had only 9 officers. So, a crime of this magnitude was shocking even to them. The initial scan of the house revealed no signs of forced entry. Despite having valuable items in her house, nothing appeared to have been stolen. Angela's wallet, containing $500 in cash, lay untouched on the bedroom dresser, and her jewelry remained undisturbed. So, the police ruled out burglary. However, the presence of the hairdryer in the bathtub indicated that Angela's death was not accidental. She'd suffered severe blunt force trauma to her head, rendering her unrecognizable from injuries. And it was clear that the attack had begun in the bedroom adjacent to the bathroom where her body was found. The bedroom bore haunting evidence of a violent attack. The bed and the carpet were stained with puddles of blood, creating a trail leading to the bathroom. The bedroom furniture and walls also had bloodstains, and so did the door frame of the bathroom. The bed had been moved away from the wall and stripped of linens, and a blood-stained pillow lay nearby. The police were determined to know what had happened to this well-respected senior resident of their community. They sent Angela's body to forensics for an autopsy, hoping for some answers. The autopsy results revealed a horrifying account of Angela's death. She'd been assaulted, as proved by the bodily fluids found in her body. There were signs of electrocution as well, but the main causes of death were determined to be blunt force trauma and drowning. Angela's attacker had subjected her to further horror, stomping on her and breaking several bones, adding to the already terrible nature of the crime. Wanting to unmask this violent criminal, the police checked the database for any registered sex offenders in the area. They found one who had a history of violent offenses, but when questioned, the suspect willingly gave a DNA sample to clear his name, and after testing, he was eliminated from the investigation. Then, police looked back on the last murder in Little Compton. Back in 1965, a local man had stalked and murdered a babysitter by attacking her head with a rock. To everyone's shock, it emerged that the man responsible for the murder had been released and was living with his parents near Angela's home. The police initiated a 2-day search to locate this ex-convict. Surprisingly, he cooperated and willingly provided a DNA sample for testing, but it didn't match the evidence from Angela's case, so he was also eliminated as a suspect. As the search for Angela's killer continued, the peaceful town of Little Compton was marred by apprehension and uncertainty. But the police didn't give up. They wanted to ensure that Little Compton's first murder case in over 30 years would not go unpunished. Police decided to revisit Angela's residence to re-examine the crime scene. They recovered some footprints near the bedroom and put the evidence in a box. They also searched the first floor that was undergoing construction. That was when the police noticed a hole in the wall covered up by a tarp. The hole was big enough for the killer to have gained entry into the house. By speaking to Angela's neighbors, investigators discovered that a local construction company had been working on the property for nearly 3 months, employing about 30 workers. But only 2 of those workers, who had helped demolish the wall, knew about the tarp-covered hole. One of them was promptly ruled out, as he had a rock-solid alibi for the time of the murder. The focus then shifted to the other worker, 23-year-old Jeremy Motika, who lived just across the state line in Fall River, Massachusetts. And despite his angelic appearance, Jeremy had a criminal record, having once been charged with kidnapping and assaulting a woman in Massachusetts. With a new suspect in sight, police worked quickly to locate and question Jeremy. On May 31st, 1999, the Rhode Island State Police visited Jeremy's home to interview him. His girlfriend, Patricia Rogalin, was also present at the time. Initial inquiries didn't reveal anything suspicious. Jeremy bore no visible injuries and seemed helpful and polite. He stated that he'd been working until 3:30 on May 29th. After returning home, he'd spent the evening drinking beer at a neighbor's house and socializing with other guests until midnight. He claimed he'd stayed home all night, going straight to bed after the gathering. On May 30th, he'd spent time with his girlfriend, Patricia Rogalin, at her parents' house in Cape Cod. Patricia confirmed this, but noted that he'd appeared severely hungover and spent much of the day in bed. They'd driven back from Cape Cod shortly before the police arrived. However, as the police dug deeper in follow-up interviews, Jeremy's account began to change. He added new details, which were inconsistent and erratic. Also, while the neighbor confirmed that Jeremy was at his house from 6 p.m. to midnight on May 29th, his whereabouts from midnight to 9 a.m. on May 30th, when Angela was murdered, were unknown. A crucial turn in the investigation came when a co-worker of Jeremy's contacted the police. The co-worker revealed that Jeremy had been displaying unusual behavior at work and telling everyone the police were trying to frame him for Angela's murder due to his prior arrest. The co-worker had tried to reassure Jeremy not to worry, since they worked on the first floor and the murder occurred on the second floor. It was then that Jeremy had admitted to using the bathroom on the second floor. The co-worker recounted another troubling detail. Jeremy had seen an evidence box labeled shoe prints that the police had collected from the crime scene. Soon after that, Jeremy was overheard on the phone, instructing his girlfriend to dispose of his work boots at her parents' place in Cape Cod. Although the police strongly suspected Jeremy, they needed conclusive physical evidence to charge him. On June 9, 1999, during another interview, the police requested a DNA sample from Jeremy. Unaware that he'd left his bodily fluid at the crime scene, Jeremy willingly agreed to provide a sample. Forensics teamed up with a private lab called Bow Technology to use a method called polymerase chain reaction, or PCR, to test the samples, instead of the generally approved DNA testing methods. The analysis confirmed a match. However, when confronted with the evidence, Jeremy came up with far-fetched explanations. He claimed to have made love with his girlfriend before coming to work and had used Angela's bathtub to clean up afterward. However, this explanation and his claim of being innocent was not taken seriously, given the circumstances of the case. On June 24, 1999, 23-year-old Jeremy Motika was arrested and charged with first-degree murder and first-degree assault. On May 4, 2000, Jeremy's defense team filed a motion requesting a pretrial hearing to determine the reliability, relevance, and admissibility of the DNA evidence. They asked the court to stop the state from using DNA evidence in the trial. They argued that the court had only allowed one type of DNA test, called RFLP, but not the type called PCR that was used in this case. The defense also claimed that the state had not given them enough information about the DNA tests done by Bode Labs, which made it hard to question Bode's witness. However, following a pretrial hearing that lasted several days, the defense's motion was dismissed. On January 23, 2001, the trial justice issued a written decision maintaining that the DNA evidence tested by the PCR method was admissible in court. In February 2001, Jeremy was charged in court for sex assaulting and murdering Angela Spence Shaw. During his trial, Jeremy maintained his innocence, claiming that the police were framing him due to his prior arrest. The prosecution noted that Jeremy knew that Angela lived alone, and he exploited this knowledge while heavily intoxicated on the night of May 29, 1999. According to the prosecutors, Jeremy drove back to Angela's home late at night and entered through the hole in the wall. He physically attacked and sexually assaulted her, and then tried to remove the evidence by staging the scene to resemble an accident. To dismantle Jeremy's claims of innocence, the prosecution called on many witnesses to testify against Jeremy. First on the witness stand was Dr. Elizabeth Laposada, the chief medical examiner for the state of Rhode Island, who conducted the autopsy on Angela's body. She detailed the extensive and horrifying injuries suffered by Angela, both visible bruises and internal wounds. She also spoke about injuries to Angela's intimate areas, indicating signs of forced sexual intercourse. She noted that DNA from bodily fluids was found in Angela's body. Furthermore, Dr. Laposada revealed that Angela was still alive when she was submerged in the bathtub after enduring physical beatings and sexual assault. She emphasized that Angela had been conscious enough to feel pain throughout the ordeal, subjecting her to immense suffering. Next, Kelly Stokes, a neighbor of Jeremy in Fall River, testified that he'd hung out with Jeremy and some friends until about 1:30 a.m. on the night of the murder. They drank rum and beer and smoked marijuana. As Stokes was heading home, Jeremy invited her to go with them, but she declined. Jeremy's girlfriend, Patricia Rogalin, testified that on May 28, 1999, she traveled to Falmouth on Cape Cod with her son and other family members to spend the Memorial Day weekend with her parents. Jeremy chose to stay behind in their Fall River home, reluctant to face holiday traffic. According to Patricia, on Saturday, May 29, 1999, after Jeremy returned home from work, she had multiple telephone conversations with him. These discussions began in the late afternoon and continued sporadically into the evening. Their final conversation was around 10 p.m. Patricia stated that during these phone calls, she and Jeremy got into heated arguments. Moreover, though Jeremy's speech was coherent, she observed signs indicated that Jeremy had been drinking. She confirmed that on the morning of Sunday, May 30th, 1999, around 8:30 a.m., Jeremy had called her to say he was driving down to Cape Cod. Upon arriving in Falmouth between 9:30 and 10 a.m., he vomited and spent the entire day in bed sleeping, looking tired and hungover. Patricia testified that after the police had questioned the pair on May 31st, Jeremy had seemed particularly interested in what she told the police. She also dismissed Jeremy's absurd claim that his DNA in Angela's bathroom was from cleaning up after they'd made love. Patricia testified that they never made love in the morning before work, preferring to do it at night. She also said that Jeremy would always clean himself later using baby wipes. During the trial, Jeremy did not dispute that the bodily fluid found in Angela's body was his. Instead, the defense argued that the DNA evidence had been planted there by a third party. Jeremy testified that, in addition to providing a blood sample, he'd also provided a bodily fluid sample to the state police on June 9, 1999. He named Detective Tella as the person who collected this sample in a parking lot and used the same to frame him for murder. However, Detective Tella denied these claims, stating that no such exchange had taken place and Jeremy had never asked for a bodily fluid sample. Furthermore, Jeremy himself had never mentioned this incident in any of his post-arrest statements. Superior Court Judge Roger E. Thompson handed down the maximum penalty to Jeremy, emphasizing his lack of remorse and labeling him the personification of evil. On April 27, 2001, Jeremy was sentenced to life in prison without the possibility of parole, despite his claims of innocence. Angela's death left her 2 children and grandchildren in deep sadness. Her sons were especially haunted by how much their gentle mother had suffered alone. Her warmth and wisdom had touched everyone's lives, and her death left a great void. She was missed greatly by her co-workers and the Little Compton community at large. Jeremy filed 2 appeals challenging the verdict, which were denied. Eventually, his third appeal reached the Supreme Court. In his appeal, Jeremy challenged several rulings made by the trial justice and questioned the credibility of the methods used by Bode Labs when testing DNA. He believed that the trial judge was unfair in not advising the jury about the possibility of a lesser offense, like voluntary manslaughter from reduced mental capacity. He also disputed the appropriateness of a life sentence without parole. Nevertheless, in 2014, Jeremy's attempt to overturn his conviction was denied. Records indicate that Jeremy, now 48 years old, is currently incarcerated at the Rhode Island Maximum Security Prison in Cranston, Providence County. Angela Spence Shaw's story shows how elderly people who live alone can be dangerously vulnerable to the whims of a killer or psychopath. Angela only wanted to renovate her house, but the person she trusted took undue advantage to attack her in her own bedroom. Do you think that justice was served for Angela? Do you agree with Jeremy's claims of innocence?